We're the Tour Junkies. We're the Tour Junkies.
What's going on, golf addicts? Welcome to the Tour Junkies golf show on the Better Sports Network. It is U.S. Open week, Los Angeles Country Club. We are so excited for this golf course. It's going to be an awesome week. We've got a great show planned for you today. We're going to have two special guests, one coming up in just a second. Andy LACC, you know him from the Inside Golf podcast, also a contributor on Golf Digest, along with Rick Gaiman. We're going to have him on the show. He lives 10 minutes from the golf course. He's played the golf course before. He's a sharp DFS mind and golf better as well. So we're going to hear from Andy LACC here shortly. We've got our boy Hank Lebioda. We've talked to him about the golf course. Hank is playing in the U.S. Open, qualified through the qualifying series, and Hank saw the course a couple of days before we had him on, and he talked a lot about what he saw, what he found in terms of the golf course. So we're going to do all things U.S. Open and Los Angeles Country Club today on the Better Sports Network. Pat, how are you? You look great. I love your T-shirt, and thanks for filling in for me last week when I was on vacation during probably the most incredible, weird day in golf since I've been born.
Yes, it was quite amazing. You decided to go on vacation when, yes, one of the biggest news days in golf happens. But we missed you, DB, and it was a good show. It's hard to remember the show. I don't even know. So much has happened that I forgot. I think we had a guest on the show, maybe. Oh yeah, Ryan French with Monday Q was on there. We were supposed to talk about the longest day in golf on guys getting qualified to come here for the U.S. Open, but we ended up talking a lot of live and everything else. But yeah, it was a fantastic week. I'm excited about this one. Listen, I'm going to feel overqualified about this golf course after what we get from Hank Lebioda, what we get from Andy LACC. I mean, we're going to know a hell of a lot about this golf course, but I cannot wait to see it because it looks fantastic.
Well, we're also going to – I want to pick Andy's brain on some picks and some DraftKings stuff too, so we'll get all into that too. Yeah. I will say I feel like I need to let the audience know, like, if I were just on vacation, I told my wife that day, I said, with all this news breaking, I would have said, like, y'all are on your own. I'm going to work today. But I was playing Chichessie Creek Club in South Carolina that day, which, as you know, is an absolute just jewel of a golf course.
It really
and
is.
I was playing with my 12-year-old son. We were excited about it, and I just told you, I said, man, I cannot pass up on Chichessie. If I were playing Harbor Town, I would have canceled the tee time and freaking, gladly hopped on with you and done whatever that day. But Chichessie was amazing. If you ever get to a random place in South Carolina near Chichessie, get there and go play that golf course. Have you played it, Pat? Did we talk about that? Have you played it yet?
No, I haven't gotten to play it yet. I hooked you up to go play it, but I have not gone to go play it yet. So
thank you.
I've turned down a couple offers. Unfortunately, it just hasn't worked out. But it is a fantastic course. Glad you and your son had a good time. And I think we even tried to get you as a guest, actually, but you kept putting Tony and I off.
The signal was weird at Chichessie. Signal was kind of weird.
Yeah.
So. All right, that's enough of that. Let's move on. Let's bring in our guest, Andy LACC, the host of the Inside Golf podcast. Very sharp guy, RickRunGood.com contributor, Golf Digest, as well as odds checker, I think, too. He is 10 minutes from the golf course. Andy, how we doing, buddy?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on, guys. I'm excited for this one, obviously. I mean, this isn't, for me, it's a top 5 golf course I've ever played. I think it's, has the potential to be one of the most interesting and unique major venues that we've seen in the last decade. Probably I'd put it in the class for me with like Shinnecock and Marion. And I was a bit worried that the news would overshadow a lot of people's excitement for this tournament. But it seems like as we sit here on Tuesday afternoon, we've kind of settled in a little bit into like, okay, we got a US Open coming up in 2 days.
I definitely think we're going to get the reprieve from. Obviously, I've already seen today a lot of some of the press conference questions have been, revolved around LIV and the PGA Tour, and most of these guys are doing a good job either answering it or avoiding it. I thought Colin Morikawa really juked everybody. I don't know if y'all saw that, but it happened just a little bit ago. Somebody asked him about it, and he goes, "Yeah, I don't know much about it, but I'll take this opportunity to tell you about what my foundation is doing around." Municipal golf and all the private golf in the area in California, which was a very good response. But it does feel like we're going to get the reprieve. I'm sure as soon as it's over and the dust settles, we'll be right back at it. Probably next week when we have a run of the mill PGA Tour event. But Andy, I know I've seen you tweeting about all the content you're doing. I know you've talked a lot about this golf course. So I don't think we need to do like a full on course breakdown. But maybe what I have seen, and you've probably seen it too, is there's a lot of differing opinions about how this golf course may set up and how it may play. We talked to Hank, and we're going to show that here in a little bit. I'm interested to see, like, what is your take now after hearing and seeing some of these opinions? What are some things you'd like to squash right now?
I think the marine layer, as somebody that lives in Los Angeles for 9 months out of the year, I think the marine layer stuff has gone a little bit too far. I mean, this golf course is going to play plenty firm.
What's the marine? I haven't seen any marine lit. What's the take?
Well, we get a bit of a June gloom in Los Angeles, so we get some more overcast weather than usual, and people were ascertaining that because of the June gloom, we would get less sunlight, which would, bake the golf course out less and maybe a little bit less moisture a little more moisture in the greens. And we'll get some overcast weather, certainly, particularly in the mornings. But this golf course is going to play plenty firm. I could tell you that definitively. I mean, I've heard a lot of good takes on this golf course, and it's a tougher golf course to handicap than Oak Hill. And I think most people that are kind of on the same page as I, that, hey, maybe this is a little bit less of a distance dependent US Open than we've seen in the past. Some of these USGA setups can get dangerously close to a long drive contest, a la Torrey Pines and Winged Foot. And this, to me, feels more in the Aaron Hills, Chambers Bay era of width and firmness and experimentation. I personally like that. I think that creates more interesting golf and more differing styles of golf being able to compete. But to me, in terms of the score, I've heard this is going to be a lot easier than previous US Opens in the past. Like, yeah, we may get a little separation on the leaderboard. I'm not there on the like 12, 13 under thing. I've heard from a few caddies that I've heard secondhand is like, they still think this is in the Hance zone, 6 to 8 under par, which has been the last 3 Hance restoration golf courses. So, I think the takes have overall, there's been a wide variety, but I think we're going to see a firm, fast, fun, challenging US Open.
Yeah, I definitely think so too. I mean, I think when you look at this golf course too, I think there's just so many different interesting things about it. Hank talked a little bit about the fairways. I mean, everybody has been talking about how wide the fairways are, but my thought is, and I think we've seen it from players, is you really got to hit. This is an angles golf course, kind of like Augusta National. You got to really hit the right parts of the fairways. Otherwise, you can be kind of blocked out a little bit on being able to hit the right shot into these greens. Is that still kind of what you think too, as far as just overall with the fairways and playing this golf course?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot of Augusta National in this golf course, particularly what you touched on, some of the firmer Masters too, particularly when we've seen Masters where Augusta gets a little bit more baked out. And I think one of the reasons why people love the Masters so much, and one of the reasons why the Masters play so well on television too, is because of what you touched on with the angles and the width, right? It's like, I really like golf courses, and this is a little bit of the problem that I had with Oak Hill. I really like golf courses where a good shot is rewarded, a slight miss still gives you an opportunity to potentially make birdie, and a big miss is really penalized. And the problem with a golf course like Oak Hill and Torrey Pines and Winged Foot is, and this is why Rory McIlroy was able to finish 7th at Oak Hill, having no idea where his ball was going off the tee, is, a 20-yard miss from Rory was essentially the delta between that penalty and a 2-yard miss from Colin Morikawa was not very great because of the trampled down there. I was there for 3 days watching. I mean, the delta between that was not that great. At LACC, it's like if you miss your line by 2 yards, you still have a great shot from the fairway. If you miss by 20 yards, you're potentially have an unplayable lie from a Barranca. And I think that is what I want to see in major championship golf. And I think that's what we're going to get this week.
Andy, have you made any outright bets to this point?
Yeah. Are you guys Succession guys at all?
Yes, I'm deep into Succession. However, I have 4 episodes remaining to watch. I have not seen the finale, so my
Yeah.
wife and I are in the last season. I love Succession.
Yeah, so I mean, you'll get the reference, and I refer to Xander and Cantlay as the disgusting brothers. I just think I think those guys have Greg and Tom written all over them,
Yeah,
and like I'm not gonna spoil the end of Succession, but they always it's never pretty, but they always end up being relevant. And I think that both of those guys, I think that there's a little impatience in the betting community when it comes to players in their late 20s. I mean, Phil won his first major at 33 years
right,
old, same with
right.
DJ. So, I think those guys are right on schedule. I can be I'm probably at times a little bit too dependent on the data. And obviously I don't really need to make the data case with either of them. Both of them
No.
are playing phenomenally. But I think those guys, at least one of them, make a pretty big statement this week. I just kind of feel it. I feel like it's time. I feel like enough people are down on their chances of actually winning one of these tournaments. And I think one of those guys makes a fairly big statement this week. So those are my 2 guys at the top. And then I've got 1 or 2 bombs as well.
We talked about them, last night on our
Mhm.
show, and it seems for some like, both of them are Cali guys, and I feel like no one talks
Yeah.
about Cantlay being a Cali guy. No one talks about Cantlay being a Cali guy.
Well, not
Do you
only
see that?
that, he went to UCLA,
Yeah.
which actually got exposure to LACC. I mean, their home course is Brentwood, but they actually got to the UCLA golf
Right.
team gets out to LACC all the time. Whereas these
San
guys that are
Diego
going to,
State.
yeah, whereas these guys that are going to Cal, I mean, they're not Homa has been played LACC once in the last decade.
What's your take on the guys up top? So, yeah, obviously the big 3, maybe you could say 4 right now at the top of the odds board would be Rahm, Scheffler, Brooks, and Rory. So if people are wanting to throw something down on 1 or 2 of those guys, give us an indication of who you're looking at for that.
I mean, I can't say a bad word about Scotty Scheffler. If you're building a case against Scotty, you'd probably start with the price. And the one thing that I will say about this golf course that I haven't heard a ton of people talk about too much is, I mean, when I played this golf course, I played it a couple times. One of the biggest things that stuck with me is like there's so much tilt and undulation to these greens.
Yep.
And if you're lost with your putter, if you don't have a ton of confidence with your putter, this isn't a get right spot. I mean, you're not going to there's not a flat 20-footer on this golf course. Not a single one. Now that doesn't mean that Scotty Scheffler can't putt well. He's putted well at Augusta, and those greens obviously have a ton of slope and undulation to them as well. But if you're not confident with your putter, you can get exposed really easily on this golf course. And what worries me is that Muirfield Village is a really easy golf course from a putting standpoint, and he looked pretty terrible there. So I don't know if this is going to be the spot where suddenly he's magically going to figure things out with his putter. Rahm's probably my favorite. I just think what this guy has been able to do on firm golf courses. Obviously, he's had a ton of success in the state of California, although I do think this is a pretty uniquely distinctive golf course that I wouldn't spend too much time comparing to Riviera or Torrey Pines. He's clearly comfortable in this area, and I think the ball striking run that Scotty is on right now has just overshadowed how consistently amazing Rahm has been as well. I mean, Rahm's the guy that won the Masters in 4 other times this year and just gained 9 strokes ball striking himself at the
Yeah.
Memorial.
Yeah.
So Rahm would probably be my favorite of that group. But it's just, it's like the way that I structure my betting cards, and I'm sure you guys are similar. It's like you're handicapping yourself if that's the direction you're going. That's a big bet, and you're pretty much all in on one of those guys.
Yeah, I would agree there too. I do think, when you look at some of this mid-range area, you kind of go up to maybe 45 to 1, 50 to 1. And then I sort of it just falls off for me because, typically when you see US Open winners, they don't get much longer than that. I will say this, you talk about the putting thing too. Like, this is why I can't go with Morikawa. Like, so many people want to talk about Morikawa as ball striking, blah, 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 blah. The putting has been terrible. I get that it's 35-1, but he's one that's kind of like a stay away in this range, even though you're getting him at longer odds than we've seen in a little bit.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I will say this about Morikawa. I think he's healthy. So if your reason for not playing Morikawa is because he had back spasms are not a back injury. Back spasms, they're called spasms for a reason. Like you kind of have them and then they can creep up again. I mean, it's certainly possibly his back spasms again. But it's not a back injury. So I think he's healthy. But I agree with you in the sense that, I mean, Morikawa and Justin Thomas have both had such terrible putting seasons in the sense where usually with those guys, they lose strokes putting about 70% of the time, but when they gain strokes putting, they win.
Yeah.
And the difference between what we've seen from Morikawa is Justin Thomas is they're still doing the thing where they lose strokes putting 75% of the time, but their good putting weeks now are like +1 instead of +4. And I agree with you in the sense that I think can Morikawa make enough 5 to 8 footers? That's what the guys talk about so much at these US Opens. Like you're going to have more 5 to 10 footers for par at a US Open than any other tournament in the entire year. And those putts are so essential for like staying in the round, you know, those par savers from 5 to 10 feet. And I'm with you. I don't know if Morikawa can make enough of those to win this golf tournament.
Yeah.
So I want to touch on the Rahm thing. I'm starting to get there with you. He's still 11-1 on FanDuel, so you're still getting him at the double digit value, which is nice compared to Scheffler with the question marks with the flat stick. What you're saying today, I have started warming on Brooks again. Like
Yeah.
I've started to kind of get there a little bit with Brooks. So I've got to I think I got to make up my mind between Rahm and Brooks there. But I'm starting to see that a little. I'm starting to see the light a little bit here with Koepka. We did talk about him a ton on our show last night. But I just don't know that I want to go without some Brooks exposure in the outright market. But I want to talk to you before we let you go, some DFS. And I have a particular range. And I think I might surprise you here, Andy, because I think I messaged you about the 6K range, but then I got digging into it. And I want to talk about this low sevens. And I know you're probably so deep enough into this like we are. You're prepared. There's some names in the low 7K range on DraftKings if you're playing tournaments that I'm very interested in. But I feel like I need to narrow them down a little bit. And maybe some listeners, some viewers out there on the Better Sports Network feel the same. So I want to rattle off a few names to you. Seamus Power, Victor Perez, Cam Davis, Gary Woodland, Sepp Straka, Justin Suh, Harris English, and Austin Eckroat. All some names that I can find some reasons outside of just price and ownership. I mean, I think Woodland will probably get some run. He's probably going to have some steam to him. But those are some interesting players down there. And to me, some nice value. And, you know, down there you have guys like Siwoo who are going to be pretty popular, I would imagine. You've got some guys in that mid 7K range that are eating up a lot of ownership. So if I can nail down a couple of these guys I have some exposure to, I'm excited about that. What would you say for a couple of those guys would be? How are they looking to you?
Did you say Mito in there too? Did you mention
say
Mito?
Mito because I think Mito's
the ownership.
salty. Yeah. I mean, I really do like Mito a lot. I'm surprised as many people are on him, but maybe people are starting to realize that like live guys are still playing well. And he's obviously had a really good season. So I didn't mention him only for that reason. I'm looking here at kind of some possible leverage plays. I kind of felt like Woodland would be the highest owned guy that I mentioned there, but I'm not sure where he gets to.
Yeah, I've been I agree with you, by the way. And I think one of the mistakes that I made at the PGA Championship, why I was a lot lower on Brooks than I should have been, is I didn't have enough respect for, I felt like the golf courses that they were playing on Live were such bad comps for these major championship golf courses. And at the end of the day, it's like, dude, it doesn't really matter if you're playing Cricket Cat or, talking stick it's just like, if you're playing good golf, you're playing, or a pro-am, like you're playing good golf. And so this time I was sure to go back and, really try, and they don't really give you much in terms of the numbers with Live. But if you go back and watch, like Mito does have the ball on a string right now.
Yeah.
I mean, he's doing some pretty provocative things from a ball striking standpoint, but you're right. The ownership is a concern. If we're talking about low owned guys, I've been pretty long on the Eckroat thing because he's
I knew that would get Pat head nodded.
I love him. I love him.
well, he's a guy, and I've said this before on podcasts, so I apologize if I'm repeating myself to some listeners, but so Eckroat's a guy that he practices out a club called Oak Tree in Edmond, Oklahoma, which is also where Matthew Wolf and Victor Hovland and a lot of the Oklahoma State guys play. It's this awesome, super hard Pete Dye course, 7,500 yards. I think it's like 50 or 60 in the Golf Digest Top 100. And one of my best buddies is a member there and plays out there. And I've been out to visit him a couple times, and we've seen Eckroat there a bunch. And all the members are like, this guy's like way better than Wolf and maybe better than Hovland. Now, the Hovland thing, we can't do that right now. But in terms, and this is way back, this is when Wolf was top 5ing in majors. Eckroat would kick his ass in money games. I mean, Eckroat shot, Eckroat shot a 61 playing with Wolf and Hovland. And both those guys shot like a 63 and 64, and Eckroat took all their money. So I don't know if this is the week for Eckroat. I'd flag that as I'm high on the guy's talent. And Harris English is the last guy I'll mention because I was super high on him at Oak Hill, and he killed a lot of my lineups at Oak Hill. But he's finished top 5 in 2 of the last 4 U.S. Opens, I believe. So Eckroat and English would probably be the guys I'd flag the most if we're talking super low owned in the low 7s.
On English, I was digging around through him. He's never missed the cut at the U.S. Open.
Yeah.
And in 25 major attempts in his career, he's only missed 5 cuts.
Yeah.
And, when you've got a 5% or maybe less 6 of 6 percentage in DFS, and you got a guy that's $7,200 who's made 20 of 25 cuts, in majors over his career, like, I don't know. He's looking nice to me. Mm-hmm. I'm hoping English kind of stays a little down. I could see him getting a little steam late, maybe because of the show. I don't know. Andy, thank you, man. We appreciate it. Listen, I know you're slammed. I know you are itching to get to the golf course. I know Thursday when the ball's in the air, you'll be excited. You'll take a big, deep breath and go enjoy the golf course right down the street. And thanks for all the content you put out. Everybody needs to go check out the Inside Golf podcast and the work he does on Rick Run Good. Thank you, dude, for coming on.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a blast, guys. Anytime.
All right, that was great stuff from Andy LACC. Good guy, sharp dude, and we appreciate him coming on. We're going to take a break. When we come back, you're going to hear from our friend Hank Lebioda, who is playing in the U.S. Open. It's his first major. He qualified through the qualifying series. We talked to him after he'd played the course for a couple of days, and he had some amazing insight into how Los Angeles Country Club is going to set up. So coming back from the break, check out Hank Lebioda. We'll be back.
So let's get into some best ball philosophy here.
Yeah. You want to take a look at how the structure is. So you mentioned earlier the FFPC has a couple different types. Like they've got super flex and one quarterback. And so that's going to change your strategy a little bit if you have only 2 wide receivers or if you're drafting 3 wide receivers. And of course, the PPR is a different aspect compared to other formats or other tournaments. And so keeping in mind the pass catching upside of some of the running backs may be more valuable in those formats. So the Austin Ecklers, the Christian McCaffreys may be more value because they get more receptions, and so like I loved taking late shots a couple of years ago on like the JD McKissicks of the world who would get 50 receptions really cheaply. So that's something to consider. But when it comes to like overall value, like you're in the middle of a draft and you just noticed that, I don't know, maybe it's Chris Godwin has fallen 14 spots, but Chris Godwin was not in your plans to be drafting. Like maybe you don't have a strong player take on Chris Godwin, or my take is that I don't think the Bucs are going to be particularly good this year. But for him to be dropping, let's say 14 spots is more than a full round. And based on the data that we've seen, if you get to draft a player more than 12 spots ahead or behind ADP, so they drop 12 or more spots, you have an 84% edge over the rest of the tournament players who are drafting this player, because typically this player isn't going to drop. You know, the average draft position is a really strong indicator of where a player is going to go. And I think that is also on the flip side. If you are reaching too much, you're giving up value in your drafts. And so when it comes to value-based drafting, you need to consider, you know, just because this guy isn't my plans or I don't have a strong player take on him, maybe that's your opportunity to sprinkle in some shares of this player at a good price.
Making you money in daily fantasy sports and golf betting. Tour Junkies on Better Sports Network.
All right, without further ado, let's bring on our boy, our friend. He once gave Pat some hair tips back in the day. It's been a couple of years. Clearly, you've not been taking the hair tips. But let's bring him in. Without further ado, our friend, Mr. Hank Lebioda. What up, Hank?
Hey guys,
What's up, Hank?
I'm
Hank,
good.
your
How
hair
are
is
y'all?
much shorter than it was when you gave Pat the hair tips back in the day.
Yes, I'm.
That's
an
what I
athlete.
was gonna say.
Oh,
He
okay.
became a dad. Things happen. right?
Yeah. Just it's easier. The personal hygiene's a little bit easier with
Yeah.
the shorter hair, so I try to keep
got
it
you.
that way.
I got you. Well, are you drinking anything tonight, Hank? Do you have anything right now? You progressing with anything?
Yes, the finest
Look at
smart
Hank.
water.
He's so healthy.
Staying hydrated. I am an athlete, so I'm trying to
Hashtag athlete.
keep my
Right.
body that way.
Yep.
We get it. We really do get it.
Yeah.
Listen, Hank, we love you, man. We're so pumped that you qualified. We were tracking you in qualifying, and happy to have you on the show. And thanks for spending some time. Tell us what you've seen so far of LACC.
It is a cool place. It is really, really neat. It's kind of like Parkland style where there's not much going on in between holes. A lot of holes kind of fall on top of one another. A lot of shared tee boxes rolling off of greens. There's this really interesting part of the golf course where you're it's like 15 green, 15 green, 16 tee, 11 tee, and 12 green are all, I mean, gosh, they're probably within 50 yards of each other. And 11 tee, 16 tee share a box, and it runs off of 15 green. So you have 15 is the 100-yard long par 3, like just very interesting, very cool hole. And 16's a 540-yard long par 4, and 11's a 290-yard long par 3. Like it's, and 12's is just a par 4, a blind tee shot par 4. Like it's so interesting. There's not much. I don't want to say consistency. That's not the right way to describe it, but it's like there's just a lot of different holes, different types of holes. Like you have hole 6 and hole 7. Hole 6 is probably plays with elevation, probably about 275 yards to the front of the green as a par 4, blind. And then you walk up to 7T, and it's a 275-yard long par 3. Like you just like things like that, where it's just so different. I think the best description I've heard of it, it's like you have like half pars on a lot of these holes. Like the first hole's a par 5, but the number 1 and number 10 are like probably the easiest holes on the golf course. And it's like that's your par 4.5. Like that's your birdie, and then hole 10's another birdie hole. And then it's just hang on to your seats. Like it gets wild, it gets fun. The condition is incredible. Like the greens aren't necessarily like super fast, but they're so tilted and so slanted and so steep that it's like they play really fast if you're going downhill, or if you get above the hole, or if you have, say you're like pin high and you have a big breaker, like it's gonna go. Like there's just nothing that's gonna stop it. Fairways are wide. I think it's really interesting playing like a full, like all the fairways, tee boxes, rough for the most part are Bermuda. So like for me, coming from Florida, growing up in Orlando and still living in Jacksonville, like it reminds me a lot of like kind of fall golf. of what I grew up playing, like kind of like November, early December, where the Bermuda is able to get cut pretty low in the fairways, has a little brown to it. You're through all the hurricane season, so you have all the rain, all the growing season's done. That rough is thick and long and juicy. But it's at the same time it's patchy. Like it's Bermuda. Like it's not the prettiest grass. It's not the most consistent grass ever. And it for me, like I wasn't expecting it. You have really beachy sand in the bunkers, so guys are gonna get plugged lies, and there are going to be a lot of balls that look like they're going to go into the bunkers that are going to get stopped by this, like foot-long St. Augustine grass that we all have in our backyards. Like I played 9 holes with Billy Horschel today, and I asked him, was like, doesn't this remind you of like growing up, like playing in your backyard? Like you would drop a ball in your backyard and hit it around the backyard and whatnot, like this thick St. Augustine grass that we all had. He's like, yeah, it's harder and thicker. It's probably more penal, but like it was not what I was expecting as far as turf condition, style, layout, but it's just so cool. It's so cool.
It's kind of a strokes gained Florida boy advantage that I'm sensing here. I mean, does it really play? I mean, we've heard obviously like unlike a lot of these West Coast courses, no Kikuyu, no POA. So we've heard, this Bermuda, through and through bent grass greens.
Yeah.
Is the Bermuda? I mean, is it that similar to Florida Bermuda?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. It's if you had like tight cut Bermuda grass, that's what it is.
I think it wasn't it Billy Ho today that I remarked. I saw rumors flying around, people freaking out because he mentioned that the course played a little soft, and that's not what everybody's been expecting because there's been no rain, and there's no rain coming. Did you sense that?
Yeah, like it's not like crazy. Like the greens are for now. It's Monday.
Yeah.
Like let's put that and throw that out there. We're not neglecting to know that. But yeah, like the greens aren't like rocketing over. Now, if you hit like a long iron or a wood into it, like it's going to bounce. That's any tour event essentially. And it's just Bermuda. Like it's not baked out. It's so healthy. Like there's no like bare dead patches of Bermuda anywhere. I talked like some of the rough is a little bit patchy, but that's like, I mean, we're talking from like, like 4 or 5 inches deep Bermuda to like 2 to 3 inches Bermuda. Like it's still there. It's not like there's any hard pan, dirt, anything like that. I do expect it to dry out as the week goes on, especially because we're just gonna have perfect weather the entire time. But yeah, it's not like first impression, like hard, really hard, but not like it's not. You're not looking at shots like, well, what the hell am I gonna do here? Like who?
I want to ask about because going back to the fairways and then sort of around the greens a little bit, but on the fairways, like we're hearing leading up to this, in any course preview you're reading about much wider fairways than you typically see in a U.S. Open. Are the fairways playing that wide though, or are there really like spots that you really and angles that you've got to hit it to on the fairways? Otherwise, you might be blocked out a little bit. I mean, do they play as wide, like off the tee, like in your sight lines? It is like this is a pretty wide fairway. I can pretty much hit it wherever I want, or is it I really need to be, left side here, right side here? It kind of narrows it a little bit as far as like where you actually need to be with the fairways.
They play narrower than they are for sure. I was thinking back through the front 9, some of the holes I walked yesterday, and then some of the holes today, where the fairways a lot like you do have blind tee shots, so you probably have like 5 or 6 blind tee shots throughout the round, which is, and even if the fairway is super wide on a blind hole, it's going to feel way smaller just because you don't necessarily know where your boundaries are. You don't know where your borders are. And a lot of the fairways are very sloped, so you can get to a point where I'm trying to think. One's popping in my head is like hole 5, hole 13, where it's like these fairways are huge. They're massive. They're like 60, 70 yards wide. But on 5, for instance, like if I hit a driver specifically, I kind of get over this crest of a hill, and then it goes just straight down into the right. So it's going to run on fairway for 40 yards, but it's going to run it right into the rough. And you're going to be down well below the surface of the green, hitting back up now to a blind shot, probably out of 5th Bermuda rough. 13 is a very unusual fairway where it's a dead straight hole, but at on the right side, imagine there's a ridge that kind of comes up, starts at maybe like 260, 270 on the right hand side and runs diagonally long ways up the left. So it goes, say, like 370 to the top on the right hand side and 300 or 270 on the right hand side, 310 to the left hand side. But then you crest this hill on the right hand side, and then it runs straight down, and you're way below the surface of the green from 180 out, probably playing out of the rough up to this green that you can't see. So then it's like the fairways play smaller. How about this? The smaller fairways play bigger because a lot of them slope towards the fairway or down into the fairway, so you can kind of bank it off of that if you want. And the bigger fairways will play much smaller just because it runs away from the center of the fairway.
Is there graduated rough from the fairways, or does it just go from like straight up fairway straight? It goes straight to the thick stuff.
Yeah, and like I said, like it could be patchy. Like the Bermuda's, it's Bermuda. Yeah. Like trust me, a majority of it's really really thick. But like it's just straight into that, and then around all of the bunkers is this St. Augustine grass, which is just gross.
Yeah, it looks rough.
It does. Is it pretty fair though around the greens as far as that Bermuda? Like, I mean, you always see these, on Twitter, drop the ball in the rough, and it looks impossible. But I mean, in the end, then we get to watching the tournament, and it always feels like way more fair than people make it out to be on social media. Yeah. So, like, as far as you're concerned with the rough, it's just U.S. Open rough. That's what it is, and there's no tricks to it.
Well, there are some.
Well, yeah, that I agree.
A lot of guys don't like hitting out of Bermuda rough or out of Bermuda fairways. Like, for me, like a guy
PGA Tour players are such pampered fucks. Who's gonna bitch about hitting out of any kind of fairway? Like, I have never once been like, I hate hitting out of this Zoysia. I'm in the fairway. Give me a break.
I mean, it's Zoysia.
Well, listen, I have complained about Zoysia, especially like around the greens.
What is it being too easy?
Just sitting up on a teat for you.
Around the greens, Zoysia, I don't like because you can't bump and run. It's too sticky.
Oh God. Anyway, Hank, finish.
Take more club. Take more club. Like guys who like use a lot of leading edge when they chip are probably not going to like Bermuda a lot, especially if they're if they're chipping down grain, it's no issue. But then like it's short, like it's not, you don't have like super long Bermuda, but it's still going to grab your club. So guys that like really use the bounce well, I think will have easy time chipping. Like specific on the fairways, and guys that can kind of manage the thick Bermuda rough or maybe not draw the worst lies and the nasty Bermuda stuff, they'll do fine.
Are you much of a golf architecture nerd, Hank?
I would love to be, but no, not like a huge nerd. I'm interested by this course. How about that? Like, it piques my interest. I like a lot of it, but I couldn't tell you, like, was it Gil Hans that came in, did the most recent kind of renovation of it?
So in the chat, Jack Fisher asks, any course that you would liken LACC to? Any comp course for you?
No, not in particular. I mean, there's so many, like I said, like there's so many like half pars where there's not, like, you have the blind tee shots that remind me of like a Donald Ross golf course, where I'm thinking of like Sedgefield, where you have quite a few like blind tee shots where you don't know where the fairway is. But then you have like these rolling hills, and this is going to sound insane to everyone because I understand I'm in Beverly Hills and I understand this is LACC, but for the life of me, I was walking up some of the fairways. I'm like, oh, this reminds me of Tallahassee. Like, it's just like the dormant Bermuda, the big pines on the sides of the trees, the thick Bermuda rough, like that. It just reminds me of Tallahassee. But there's not. I was trying to think, like, there's nothing like it, because there's no, once again, like there's no like normal like thread that you see run throughout a golf course. Like there's no like specific like Pete Dye architecture bunkers or like the the skinny long fairway bunkers, things like that. Like they're not there, and it's interesting, it's fun, and it's very different across a bunch of different holes, different
Yeah.
styles of
With
holes.
all the like blind tee shots and tee boxes that are close together and all these things that are happening, do you worry about your safety at all? I mean,
I did.
seriously.
I spoke to my dad. I spoke to my dad on the phone this afternoon and told him, I was like, man, this is the first time I've ever had to yell four in a practice round. But because it's like people are just there and you don't really see them coming. There's going to be
I thought this was about
definite ballet,
finding
like a ballet of
finding like a group of homeless people in the Barranca or something. I thought that was it is LA.
No, I think I think it's well secluded. I
Yeah.
think there's
There it is.
quite a
Yeah.
few nice houses that kind of border every part of the golf
Well, I mean,
course.
apparently the
that,
Playboy Mansion's somewhere out there,
Yeah.
Hank. I mean, okay.
14
Oh, yeah, look at it. Hank
Yes,
knows
you
You
know
can hear the
exactly where it is.
monkeys and the
Yeah.
peacock. The animals you could hear clear as day walking up 13 fairway, and you're 250 yards away.
That's amazing. I actually had to Google Barranca, though. I will admit that. I mean, even DB, I think he was writing something about Barranca. I was like, what the heck?
Those are like the dried out
I
water
guess.
hazards.
Well, they're
like
like
a cliff or something.
no, it's just like it's like a ditch.
gorge.
It's just a ditch.
Okay.
It's gross.
Yeah.
You don't want to go in it. And they're in a lot of places on the golf course.
So
like-
Barranca is just another
it's
fancy
terrible.
way, California way to say ditch or something.
It's
Yeah,
it's a
yeah.
ditch with hypodermic needles in it. That's what it is.
okay. All right.
Yes.
Our friend
Mhm.
our friend Josh Kistler wants to know winning score over or under 10 under. What do you think?
Oh, if it gets the greens firm up, like it could be 10 under, it could be a little bit more. If it stays soft the way it is, maybe a little bit lower. Because you're going to have a good bit of wedges. Like I know I just told you guys about 540 yard par
Yeah.
4 and a 290 yard long par 3, but like you're going to have wedges. Like guys will have opportunities to score. And I think it's just going to be who handles the rough the best when you do end up in it.
Our friend Spaz Bite in the chat wants to know, Hank, are you making any equipment adjustments for turf conditions?
No, I had a long conversation with Aaron Dill, the Vokey wedge rep that we have with Titleist, earlier, right after I qualified, and I said, Aaron, what am I getting into? Like, I don't play a lot of golf in California. As far as like, I grew up in Florida.
Yeah.
I didn't play out here a ton. I'm not familiar with LACC. I have no idea what type of turf it is, what type of grass, what to expect. Could you walk me through something? He said, yeah, he's like, LA in the summer, I expect to be firm and fast. You might want something with a little less bounce on it. So I use, for like your golf nerds, I'm sorry, I use a K grind, like a really fat sole with they would consider a low bounce, 6 degrees bounce. But with the super fat sole, it plays like more bounce, if that makes sense. And I have since college. It's just something I'm comfortable with, something I like a lot. And Aaron was telling me, yeah, it's something like maybe with a little bit sharper leading edge, a little heel relief, a little toe relief, so then you could use that same lofted wedge from everywhere and so be able to hit, a little bit more draw shots, a little bit more toe down shots, a little more cut, and you'll have tighter leading edge, so you could, get under the ball more. And on the first hole out here, I was like, there's no way I'm going to switch from what I already use because this turf is so similar to what I'm used to back home.
Nice.
Other than that, no real equipment changes. Update a 4-iron, but it's the same thing. There's nothing. It's just an updated version of the 4.
So let me ask you this: like you talked about the wedges, is this kind of a U.S. Open? Because I think what everybody's trying to figure out is like, is this a U.S. Open where it's bomb and gouge situation, or
no?
Yeah,
I don't
you don't think
think so.
so.
No, I don't. I mean, because it's like I don't see the benefit of like bombing it way down. Like everyone's going to be hitting driver, but like even on the short holes, like I don't see the benefit really of like bombing it way down there, because then you're not going to be able to hit the green, because some of the greens are 7 yards deep, and you're going to be coming in from below the green with a how good are your wedges? Like, you're gonna be.
Yeah.
It's just no room. Now, I could be crazy. I could be completely wrong. But it's like I don't necessarily see like a super bomb and gouge person winning. One of the par fives, you like hole 8, the par 5. Like I think you're gonna have to lay up on anyway. You could reach it, and you only have maybe like a 3-wood and 3-wood off the tee and a 4-iron or a hybrid into the green. But like you can't send driver there. Everyone's going to be able to reach the first hole no matter what. It's not going to be just for some people. 14, the third par 5 is like it would help to be able to carry it 310 yards, but it's like that green, you don't really want to go, like you won't be, I don't know if you'll be able to hit the green in 2 just with the amount of space you're given. And then you're going to want a short wedge in. So it's like, do you really want to miss the green in a bunker and then have no chance of hitting the green, or just lay back to 110 yards or so and you'd be able to hit a wedge?
Hey Hank, we appreciate you spending this much time with us, man. We appreciate it. You're awesome. We'll all be cheering for you, and let's have a day, especially on Thursday. You know what I mean? But let's have days, but especially on Thursday.
Thank you guys very much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
All right, buddy. We'll have you on again.
Appreciate you.
See you, dude.
Yeah. Take care, y'all.
Welcome back to the Tour Junkies Golf Show on the Better Sports Network. Hope you enjoyed the segment with Hank Lebioda. He was fantastic. Pat, aside from just loving Hank because he's a good dude, we've known him for a couple of years. I had some key takeaways from him that I think people just really aren't talking about. One of them is, if you noticed, and we kind of talked about it, I guess, but his strokes gained Florida boy, like. Some of the similarities with this golf course to a lot of Florida golf courses, and there's so many guys in this field that are Florida comfy, one of which is Brooks Koepka, who I mentioned I was warming on to Andy LACC in the first segment. It just seems like this is, yes, it's in LA, it's in California. There's maybe some things that are kind of West Coast about it, but it feels like the agronomy is rather Floridian.
Yeah, that was a huge thing. He went on and on about it a little bit, but it was interesting to hear that, and because it's just not something you see out there in California. So, I heard also today some folks talking about this rough too. That the good thing about that Bermuda is you kind of you know what you're going to get. It's not like a lot of U.S. Open roughs where you just have no idea what the ball is going to do. But with Bermuda, at least if it's sitting down, it typically acts this way. If it's kind of middle of the rough, it's going to, maybe fly a little bit more, or at the top of the rough. So it just depends on the lie you get. But I think that's interesting. These guys know Bermuda in a way that, I think, the Florida guys just grow up on. So
speaking of that rough, it's not the U.S. Open until you get ball dropping in the rough videos.
Gotta have it.
It's just not. There's been many flying around the internet, balls dropping everywhere in rough spots. I feel like it's a really big missed opportunity for some sort of razor company or like Manscaped. Like Manscaped should be the official partner of the U.S. Open, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they do all the ads about keeping everything neat and trim and tidy and stuff, or maybe not letting it get out of hand. I feel like that'd be a perfect marriage.
It could be, what they could do is like, you have the ball drop with the apple drops in the new year.
Yeah.
Like you could have the Manscaped ball drop at the US Open, and it's just like everybody's gathered around, and it's just going to happen once. Like we don't need to see it all over Twitter in different ways.
That signals that the US Open is officially started.
Yeah. Ball drop in the rough.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we got a couple videos about it, but let's take a look at some of the ones that have gone around. Look at now. It does look. That thing disappears. That's scary.
It's coming. What ball comes in at that angle from straight?
Well, true.
Vertical.
Yeah.
Like you got to throw it out a little bit and see what happens. Maybe.
I do think it's long. It seems like it's been a little bit longer around the green than it has been off the fairway, because I've seen other videos of, I don't know. There's just so many. It's just not U.S. Open week until we see that happening. So
one I thought was interesting though actually was throwing it. This kind of showed like how fairways are. Like if you don't hit the right side of the fairway, it had the ball like hitting in the middle of the fairway and then hitting the slope, rolling into the rough. That one actually kind of interests me a little bit because I wasn't expecting that. So.
Yeah, I guess that's actually how it will go down.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me ask you this: have you been able to dig into the first round leader market at all?
I've looked at it. I think we're not going to really have a weather advantage. Andy mentioned something about the June gloom. I hadn't really heard of that with the you kind of get a little overcast in the morning. So it is a little moister in the morning. Like you're going to see perhaps a little bit softer. I do think it is going to be a firm and fast golf course. But I think if you do want to play the first round leaders, I feel like you just go with the morning guys, and that's where you go. I don't think you mess around with the afternoon guys. So if I'm looking at a few that I think I could see having good first rounds, Justin Rose is probably on the shorter end at 45-1. Patrick Reed, he's at 66-1. I think he's a guy that we could see up there on the leaderboard the first day. You know who's always going to be on the leaderboard the first day?
Charlie Hoffman.
No. This guy is one that it's near and dear to your heart that you think could never win a golf tournament.
You know what, Pat? And I know who this is now, and I
Yeah.
will say this: he is the one name I was looking at and be like, you know what? I'm just going to throw it out there. It's Patrick Rogers.
Yeah, Patrick Rogers, 110-1 right now.
I think that's a play.
Actually, no, sorry, 130-1. 130-1 was where I saw him on FanDuel, I believe.
He's going off early. He plays U.S. Opens well. He's playing good this year. It could definitely happen.
It could. And if you want one more, because you brought him up earlier, Austin Eckroat, he checks a ton of boxes here, man. He really does. 150-1 Austin Eckroat. Andy likes him. You mentioned him. He could be another one to look at. He is going off in the morning as well, I believe. I think I could be wrong on that.
Yeah, he started popping for me. This is let's see. He's played in one major, and it was the U.S. Open in 2019, which is at Pebble Beach. He missed the cut. Like Pebble Beach is so different than this place. No big deal. So I mean, it's not his first major, but obviously he doesn't have a whole lot of major experience. But he definitely seems to have kind of shifted some gears here lately with his game. So I think Eckroat is an interesting option for sure across DFS and first round leader. I do want to do our cash lineup before we run out of time. I want to make sure we kind of think through that. So let's do the DraftKings 50-50 or double up official Tour Junkies Better Sports Network cash lineup. Pat, did you do one last week? I don't know.
I believe I did, and I can't remember how it did. I don't think it did very well at all, actually.
Well, it's because you didn't have me. We won't count that one. We'll throw that one.
That one gets thrown out.
The week before at the Memorial, I'm actually gonna work this in as also just the tip, because I think this is not a just the tip that we've given before, and it is like the definition of just the tip. It is a very tiny tip. Okay, very tiny. If you're going to play DraftKings 50-50 and double up contests and enter them as a cash lineup, here's the tip. You have got to put that lineup also in at least just one GPP, one GPP, one tournament, just in case the lineup goes off. And the reason I'm reminded of that, Pat, is because our Memorial, I think it was the Memorial 50-50, the cash lineup we did for Memorial, was really, really good. Do you remember that? Like it was very good. It would have cashed in a ton of GPPs, a ton of tournaments. It would have been up near the top of the board on a handful of lineups, and it was only a 5 of 6 too. Tom Kim missed the cut on us. It was only a 5 of 6, but there was such a low 6 of 6 percentage that we still did great. So just the tip: put your 50-50 and double up lineup in at least one tournament, even if you're not a tournament playing kind of guy. Just put it in the $5 and just in case you have the nuts. Okay. All right. 50-50 double up approach in a tournament like this, in a major championship, where the amount of people who get 6 of 6 golfers through is going to be very, very limited. You got 156 players. It's only top 60 in ties make the cut. You're going to have a very low 6 of 6 percentage. In a cash lineup, it's the same for the major, right? Like we definitely want to be balanced here. We want to make sure that we give ourselves the best opportunity to get 6 through. Honestly, at a major, a 5 of 6 cash lineup will likely cash as long as you probably have some good leverage in there. So let's get it started there. I actually want to do this. Normally we don't dictate where we start. We can start wherever. But let's agree on the highest priced person that we will start a cash lineup with and not go any higher. Can we agree on one?
Yeah, I think we can.
Xander?
I think I would not go much for. Yeah, I would not go any further than Xander. I don't want to go up to Rory and
Yeah.
Hovland at 10. Really hinders us too much. So I would say Xander for sure at 9,600.
I mean, Andy kind of talked about Xander in terms of his outright bets and the Disgusting Brothers, but Xander, incredible U.S. Open record, right? Playing well. It just feels like it. He's extremely underpriced on DraftKings. He's a really good value there. 9,600. We'll start with that.
Yeah, I like that.
All right, where do we go from here?
Well, I think you can kind of. This is where I feel like you drop down here and go to almost one of the lowest points that you feel like you can get to.
Okay.
And for me, I think it's Mito. It's
Golly,
7,200.
we're vibing right now.
Yeah,
I was
I think
literally scrolling. I was like, oh, Gary Woodland, and then I was like, nope, Mito, and then you said Mito.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's Mito. Andy mentioned him as well as just the way he's hitting it. Has played good in majors, so I think we go Mito there.
For those of you who don't know, Mito Pereira is a full-time Live Tour player. Almost won the PGA Championship at Southern Hills last year. Hit the tee shot in the water. Could have been a major winner, but he's 7,200. All right, so we've kind of got our bookends. Our highest priced player we're going to go is Xander at 96, Mito at 72. We've got an average of 8,300 remaining. Let's see. We want sure things, people. Sure things. And I think one of the surest bets here, despite having a brutal playoff loss on Sunday at the RBC Canadian Open, Tommy Fleetwood at 7,900 is just playing too good. Everything is clicking for Tommy Ladd. I love him this week.
Yeah, huge fan of Tommy. I would certainly put him in there. I think that's where you go. And then, you know what? I think you go with the other Englishman up near the top of the 8K range, Tyrrell Hatton at 8,900. Still only pushes us down to 8,200 on average left if we take Hatton. So I think we go there.
Yep, I like it. I think this guy's going to give us a little bit of leverage, even though we don't have to have the ownership leverage in a cash lineup as much. But I do think Shane Lowry at 85. Could I talk you into Shane Lowry? Would you agree on the Shane Lowry call?
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm a big Shane Lowry fan.
Okay,
so.
That leaves us 7,900 for the last spot.
Well, I think you could do a lot of things here.
Yeah.
Tom Kim and Corey Connors scare me a little bit, so I don't think I'm going to go there. Rose, though, I like. Fowler, I like. And Adam Scott, I like. Those are three right there. I almost could, Fowler to me is just been lights out all season. We could just go Fowler. I think the ownership might be a little less, though, if you went to like Adam Scott down there at 7,500 and left some on the table. So it just kind of depends on what you want to do there. But
I don't think it's terrible. I mean, we've got $400 remaining in salary. I think Lowry gives us some leverage. Maybe people don't go all the way down to Mito at 7,200. Maybe, I don't know. I think it's good enough. I think we roll with this. You got Xander Schauffele, Tyrrell Hatton, Shane Lowry, Tommy Fleetwood, Ricky Fowler, and Mito Pereira. That is the official Tour Junkies Better Sports Network cash lineup for 50-50s and double ups. Listen, man, I'm excited. LACC looks really, really fun. Looks like a great course. It's something different. Everybody should be aware that the U.S. Open is going to bring variance regardless of the course that it goes to, but it's always going to be a tough setup. LACC brings even more because we've not seen it before. We've not seen it other than the Walker Cup. So don't be afraid to take some stands in DFS. Don't be afraid to do something different in DFS. And let's have a great week. I think it could be a great time. I'm looking forward to recapping it, and we've got a big week next week, another elevated event for the travelers. So thanks for watching the Tour Junkies Golf Show on the Better Sports Network. Thanks to our friend Andy LACC and Hank Lebioda for stopping by. I hope you enjoyed it. Have a great week. May your screens be green and bend over your bookies. See ya.
Oh!